What's up, yogis? You're in the machine. More Mayurasana, Peacock pose. Had some folks asking about this recently, and I think there's some confusion because it's so much different than the other arm balances we do. We're stretched out long instead of curled into a tight ball. The contact point for our balance is at our stomach and chest instead of on our knees or our legs. Our grip to the mat is totally backwards, which throws a lot of people off. And of course, we have to use the core, but in a much different way than with the other arm balances. There are a lot of moving parts, but we're gonna get to it right now. Peacock pose. I guess it looks like a peacock. It's a really cool looking pose and great exercise, but it's kind of weird compared to the other arm balances we do, where usually we're contacting the arms somewhere on the legs, and of course the fingers are forward to control our balance. There's three really important things to keep in mind when you're working this. One is the position of the arms, both on the body and on the mat. Two is the angle that you have to put the arms at to properly distribute the weight. And three is the use of the core. This is a lot of back, but enough stomach to keep yourself solid while you rest on the elbow. So let's start with the last one first. Because there's so much gravitational pressure on either side of our fulcrum, on either side of the elbow spot here, there's a tendency, even if our core is strong, to kind of sink down and make the peacock look kind of like an umbrella instead of a straight line. So what you have to do to compensate for that is almost do a back bend, anticipating that you're gonna have a little bit of drop to straighten out. So here's what I mean. If I just lay flat and try to lock myself up, you think that's enough, but eventually the weight down of your head and chest and your legs is going to cause you to kind of be bent with your butt up or your back up at the contact point for your elbow. So you need to literally do a back bend, and this is a good test. If you're not able to do this kind of Superman movement with your chest up and your legs up, you don't have the core for this. I think most of us do. That's the core at the back. You're really flexing those spinal erectors to do a bit of a back bend. Secondly, there's some core in the front, and it's different than like holding core or sit-ups. You have to be stable enough that you can rest your elbows on your midsection without smushing into them and suddenly making you wobbly. It's almost like you're holding them as if you were going to get punched in the stomach or something. It's really important to keep that in mind. So err on the side of caution. Overdo it with a back bend, so when gravity sets in, things will get nice and straight. The positioning of the arms is super important. Of course, this grip is backwards. It weirds people out. I need to get this as completely backwards as possible so I don't have my elbows out on the edge of my torso and my rib cage where I'm going to slide through. This means your shoulders are really likely to jam forward. There's almost no way around that. It's a weird habit to get into because almost everywhere else in yoga, our shoulders are up, back, and down with the scapula together. So don't overdo this, but don't think you're going to be able to put the scapula back together, because if you're a normal human, your arms are gonna follow and you're gonna fall off. So I like to go way forward, way upside down, like pinkies touching, eye of the elbow directly up, then bring it in. Now with that attachment, I'll see what else I can do to get my shoulders uncrunched, but I don't want to do it at the expense of separating the arms. Placement on the body is also important. Years ago, I was taught, put your elbows together to ensure that you have that external rotation for proper placement of the palms. That's a good idea, but then you almost have one balance point and you start dealing with side to side lateral balance issues instead of just front to back. So I like to bring it in and drop them just barely on either side of my sternum with like an inch or two in between. That gives me some stability side to side and front to back. It's almost like I can deal with four corners of balance instead of trying to be on one little point. This is the most important part, and it geeks a lot of people out. Almost no one's wrist will bend back past 90 degrees. In fact, mine's not even at 90. It's a little more open than that. For that reason, I have to be able to shift forward a little bit and not break my wrist. Also, the fulcrum point on my body is right at the bottom of my rib cage. That means I have more weight behind me with my legs and my big butt than in front of me with just my shoulders and my head. To compensate for that, I really have to shift. So this is an error a lot of people make. Again, one, they're not quite externally rotated enough with the arms. They're kind of like this with my fingers slightly out. That means the contact is at the edge of the ribs and it's easy to slip through. I want to be on a flat spot here on either side of my sternum at my ribs, so it's easier to balance side to side. So I don't want too much of one, but I don't want it too much of a single point either. So imagine about an inch or two between your arms. Then from here, if I just try to go straight down, one, it's complete hell on my wrists, and two, I have too much weight behind me. There's no way this is gonna work. So watch the way I position these arms, set them in place, separate a teeny bit, roll the fingers down. Now watch the angle of my forearms going this way to shift more weight away from my legs. So I'm here and I lean way over here. You should see this downhill slant from my elbows to my wrists. Really important. The nice thing is you're not that far off the ground, so if you overshoot it and you face plant, 5 or 6 inches, you're not going to kill yourself. So let's make sure we have all those pieces together. Remember, if I'm too close with the elbows, I might get wobbly laterally. If I'm too wide, I might slip through. So I want to squeeze together, use my shoulders, triceps, everything I can to solidify, but leave an inch or two right in the middle. So my triceps are on my rib cage, more or less. Two, I really have to lean forward. If you want to practice this, you can put one leg forward and just see about lifting one leg at a time with this angle from my elbow down to my wrist. The engagement of the back is super important. Remember, I'm resting all of my body weight right here, so my stomach needs to be engaged like I'm literally going to get punched in the stomach, but my back has to be super flexed, almost like I'm bowing. If I just try to go straight, like I think this feels pretty straight, I'm probably not really straight. I actually lift up with my glutes and my low back to err on the side of caution and compensate for that downward gravitational force. Not an easy pose, and it doesn't fit in all the places like in a vinyasa or a flow. It usually comes out of a resting posture or maybe even something like a yogi squat where we turn, sit, and shoot the legs back or something like that. Really impressive. One of the few poses I can think of where your grip is backwards, which means your fingers aren't saving you from falling forward like they would in crow or crane or whatever. Arm balancing is a lot of fun. It's a great way to look cool on Instagram and to build core and arm strength. But remember, it's just one part of yoga. You don't have to arm balance, and if you do, you don't have to be perfect at it to get the benefits. I can do this sort of lousy, but still work my back and get some arms in, maybe one leg at a time. If I have to, rest my forehead to keep lifting those legs and working that back. It's just yoga, baby. You can do it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the little bell, and I'll see you next time in the machine.
But the whole point of the machine is to relieve you of that suffering.